Mukotoni wokaya ya ionalelo mukotoni wokaya ya ni wokaya ya waona lavanda owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ni wokaya ya waona lavanda owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ni wokaya ya waona lavanda owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ni wokaya ya waona lavanda owe Chambe shina posa ionalelo chambe shina posa ndechitashani newaluokoa owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ndechitashani newaluokoa owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ndechitashani newaluokoa owe lelo ionalelo owe lelo ndechitashani newaluokoa owe sunsuntilo mwana iyo walelo sunsuntilo mwana mwana wanina sumwa kumalonda owe sunsuntilo mwana iyo walelo sunsuntilo mwana mwana wanina sumwa kumalonda owe chambe shina posa chambe shina posa newaluokoa owe lelo owe lelo owe lelo owe lelo sunsuntilo mwana sunsuntilo mwana nasuma kumalona owe lelo owe lelo Abuta cheve mabombai amutubira mwewa mabombai bambai basakala mwewa mabombai balubi mwewa mabombai bamule mena mwewa mabombai bamule kunambiru kishakwe owe yedelo Bachishala na dotera owe elele. Bachila me na dotera owe elele. Shambe shina posaye, sum chiyamana bachi sunkana dotela mwe, badakana dotela owe yele, bamkundu nebo na dotela bamkundu nebo na dotela badakontana dotela Bashima na dotela owe yele.
Ladies and gentlemen, all our viewers, wherever you're watching us all over the world, welcome to this special edition of the Wakwetu TV. Today, we've got a very important program show. And before I go into the show, that song was called Mukonto by one of our Zambian Chasaya Sichilima, featuring Sakara Brothers. Before I introduce my guest, I just want to introduce the topic of our program today. And the theme of our program today is Zambia's current opposition politics fit for purpose? Some of you might be wondering, this is a business show, but why are we talking about politics? Politics are very important in that they create if there's no good business environment created by politicians, both ruling party and the opposition, then business is bound to suffer. Now, this is why we're talking about the opposition politics. Are they fit for purpose? Are they going to enable that business environment good? Are they going to result into an enabling business environment? And before we go into the topics, let me just introduce my guest, Mr. Nelson Bimba. Mr. Nelson Bimba, can you introduce yourself, please? Mr. Nelson Bimbe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chilufia, and thank you for having me on your show. And thank you to everyone who is tuned in to listen to tonight's discussion. I hope it will be of interest to everyone listening in. The topic is quite loaded, considering what has been happening of late. So we hope we will contribute to that discussion as well. I know it's raging on various forums on social media and in the media. Thank you.
Yeah, and our viewers, you are encouraged to log in and ask questions or contribute. I've already posted the link on Facebook, on all Facebook platforms. Yeah, let's move into the program. Today, the topics of our discussion today are, we'll talk about audits of local government, local debt, which has turned to an auditing security wings by foreign firms. It looks like the oppositions are not happy that we are auditing the Ministry of Defense, because to them they are saying it's a security threat. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the politics of farming inputs, politics of drugs, which is Ministry of Health, and the politics of persecution versus accountability. Mr. Bimbe, can you just make some comments on that before we go into the main program?
And thank you very much, Patrick. To start with, I've been really worried. I've been following the political discourse in Zambia, this is my country, and trying to understand what's really going on with the current opposition politics, so to speak. I have to say I'm very disappointed with the current, the way they are putting up their politics. So this actually speaks to some of the points that you've raised earlier, which we're going to go into in a way to show that this type of politics is actually dangerous. I call it the politics of this misinformation, disinformation, pure propaganda, insults, falsehoods, and a bit of tribal hate in that. So the question then is, how are these politics bad? From my view, this type of politicking is actually a danger to democracy. We are just coming, trying to entrench our democracy. We are just a young democracy. And this sort of politics are really a danger. I wouldn't want to subscribe to people that say Mount politics are bad. Mount politics are very good. They've worked in every developed country where they respect that coexistence of different political opinions. However, what has been happening lately is a sad story. The other thing is we've been talking about, ever since the multi-party politics came into Zambia, we've been talking about participation of the minority groups. Usually the participants in Zambia's politics are the old males, so to speak. There are less women. There are less youth. And the intelligentsia are also shunning politics. And this type of opposition politics they are peddling actually creates that alienation. People are not willing to put up themselves to those politics. The third part is those kind of politics are actually bad for the economic development. We seem to be just talking about these politics falsehoods. And, we need investments. We need people that are investing to have that sense that, there is stability within the country. But if those politics of hate continues, people might shun investing because you never know what might happen. Now, having said that, how have we come to this position? My view is, or my feeling is, looking at it, is two things. One, the current president has raised the levels of politics. It's issue-based. He's based on issues. Unfortunately, a lot of our politics have been populist politics and disparaging individuals, which the current president does not subscribe to. And that has really put some of these opposition politics in a situation that they cannot comprehend. They don't know how to run those from the old school. The second part, which I think is interesting, but also very dangerous, and I think citizens should really take keen interest in this. And here's my take. There seems to be two groups that are propagating this sort of politics. And what is the motivation? The first group, which I might call mostly are politicians from the old government, which is the PF and their surrogates, as well as the so-called businessmen that had some sort of advantage in that dispensation. And this group is basically trying by all means to divert the attention of Zambians to not think about what they did. In short, they are trying to run away from accountability. They know that, very soon, everybody will know what they've done, what they did, and they are trying to run away from that by diverting attention. The second group, however, has noticed that the first group is trying to divert attention. So if they can help amplify that diversion, they are bound to make money. And these are the rabble-rousers, which we know. Some of them are called political oppositions, some are NGOs, and some are, people that were benefiting, whether rightly or wrongly, from whatever was on the table in the last government. So they've sensed there is money to be made, and they are going to help propagate that narrative. Now, if we put these two groups together, really, I don't think they care for the citizens. They don't care about the country. They both care about themselves. The first group wants to avoid jail, wants to keep their loot. The second group wants to use the first group to make money. So that's my take on that one.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Bimbe, this is very, very, very interesting, because when you look at how the propaganda, the misinformation is moving, it looks like these guys are so well coordinated, because those topics you've mentioned there, farming imports, drugs. Yeah, some of the issues, yes, the current government is partly to blame, but most of the issues come from the previous government, and there's no way those problems they created will be resolved within 1 year or even 1.5 years. Yeah, but then before I go into there, let's look at some of the questions. Yeah, my first question is, are the current Zambia's current political opposition politics good for the creation of an environment, an enabling business environment? Looking at the points you have addressed,
Yes, it depends at the level that people will get jittery, bringing investment, or even the local investment expanding their businesses, taking risks in creating or growing their businesses, because we are teetering towards more division within society. And divisions, as we've seen in Rwanda, unfortunately, in 1994, precipitated to a situation where there was genocide. Civil wars are caused by such things, and you have we have to be very careful. Tribe is a very, very dangerous thing to play with, and that can cause a lot of problems. That is on the business side. When we talk about the way the current, or rather the PF, have tried to peddle these things, and and some of them tend to go with it. I'll talk about firstly the say, for example, we take FISIP. In its creation, FISIP, from my understanding or from what I think it should have been, it's actually a social safety net, right? Now, if it was created as a social safety net, similar to the what do they call it, the social cash transfers, it's therefore it's meant for those people that cannot afford have, are in that lower bracket. So it helps them have input so that they are able to grow food to improve their nutrition. For their livelihood, they can sell a bit of that. As well as, their excesses could be sold back to the system, thus creating, improving food security. Now, if we look at it from that point of view, one would have thought FISIP originally should have been created or run by the Ministry of Social Services rather than Agriculture, because it wasn't looking to agriculture per se, but helping those people. Now, the way it's being propagated by the opposition and others is like when one, say, drops arrives in Zambia, listens to the complaints about there's no fertilizer, there's no seed. One would think the government every year they dishes out these commodities for everyone to use. But actually, when you look at the criteria for accessing those, it's very clear. It's targeted. So I would want to have a sense of whoever is saying there is no farming inputs, there's no thing. It's better to have some sort of specificity. So, for example, you could say in this locality, these are the eligible people, right? If these are the eligible people, out of that, how many have received their inputs? You'll find that it's just a small section. That's the way it's supposed to be looked at. However, going from history in the past government, the people talking are not actually interested in the actual beneficiaries of those inputs. What they are interested is in the upstream, not the downstream. The upstream being the procurement and the transportation of those commodities. That's all they are interested in. Who gets the contract to procure fertilizer? Who is going to get the contracts to deliver the fertilizer? It's not about the end user. Of course, the small guys who take advantage at the downstream and get the commodities that they are not supposed to take. So that's the argument. So this argument of there's nothing, blanket kind of thing, it doesn't make sense. It's not helpful. We need to be specific. Who are those people who are supposed to benefit from this commodity based on the criteria that the Ministry of Agriculture have put across, and work out who hasn't. And I think the Ministry of Agriculture also has a role to play. They need to be forthcoming in providing that information.
Mr. Bimbo, hold your peace. Hold your peace. I'm gonna come to that question. I'm gonna ask you a question because you've started about FISIP, and but then before I come to my question, Mr. Bimbe, FISIP in the previous government was just input based, but with the new FISIP, it's more than just inputs. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yes. So, if, as I said earlier, if we look at FISIP as the way I think it was conceived, it was supposed to help those people, those small farmers that cannot afford the inputs themselves. which means they are in that social bracket on income-wise, on ability. So if you look at it that way, then it is a social safety net, right? Rather than an agricultural kind of program. If it were an agricultural kind of program, we could have been seeing things like, metrics. Who got fertilizer? How much did they sell back? How much? All that kind of metrics, we could have had those kind. The current configuration, from my understanding, is being changed to become a fully fledged farming support program, so to speak. I don't know how it's being called now. So what it means is it's going beyond just the input, which is the seed and the fertilizer. It's going into also support for other things, for example, extension services, providing information about markets. So it's kind of a holistic approach to how you do agriculture. The commercial farmers, they know how to do these things, but it's for those other peasant farmers. And I hope once that comes on board, the qualifying criteria might be adjusted, hopefully, so that we encourage other small farmers rather than those that cannot afford based on the current FISIP criteria. Then that way, it becomes a fully fledged agriculture support program. Having said that, we need then to have proper metrics to measure, how this program is working in terms of how much is put in, how much is taken out, by who. So that way, then we'll be able to say, is it really working? From what I've found, what I've seen, I don't think FISIP in its current form is working. It can be seen to be working, but actually is a waste of money at the end of the day.
Now, Mr. Bimbe, we are still on FISIP. It looks like some of the propaganda or misinformation the opposition is giving to the public. It looks like our current government, though they are doing things, there is a new farmers input support program, which is replacing the old one, and it looks like the PF are taking advantage of the government not able to communicate properly the information to the people. A lot of people up to now, they don't know how this farmers input support program, who is eligible and who is not eligible. And from the presidents, I will start from the presidents. It looks like, from my understanding, the president is on top of things. He understands the guiding principles of FISIP, or Farmers Input Support Program, and he has already articulated it. The 8th National Development Plan talks about nutrition, food security. These are the two key objectives or deliverables or goals at that level, at the president's level. The president has already talked about this. But Mr. Bimbe, what do you expect the Ministry of Agriculture? What are their deliverables or goals? And also, what role should the party do in order to communicate information about FISIP properly to the public? Because the government are providing services to the people, and they need to explain to the people how this works. Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. Yes, from the top level in the 8 NDP, There is, the idea that Zambia, with the, the arable lands that we have, and everything, and we are seeing also the war in Europe, Ukraine v. Russia, which are the biggest suppliers of grain as well as fertilizer and inputs to fertilizer manufacturing. And then we also kind of look at the effects of climate change, the population growth. Zambia stands to benefit in terms of becoming some sort of a food basket to contribute to that food. But at the same time, it contributes to the whole idea of food security. Now, the second part, obviously, is nutrition. Having a healthy society improves the economic development of the country. So that is well articulated at that point. Now, when it comes down to the Ministry of Agriculture, I think at the moment, I'm not sure whether this 2022-23 farming season is based on the old FISIP or the new one. So I wouldn't comment much on that. But however, if we are going to base it on the newer FISIP, I think it's time to start building that capacity within the ministry in terms of information provision, making sure the information that they provide is really accessible to everyone. We live in a modern world now. Technology is all over. Most people, I think smartphone penetration in Zambia is quite high, even in villages it's there. Surely that's a best conduit to provide that information. You can use YouTube in local languages, everything. That will be the starting point. The other bit where they need to also build capacity is to work with also the Zambia National Farmers Union. They got big farmers in there. They know how they produce, how much they produce, what is the optimum production levels per hectare of whatever commodity that you need to produce. They can help as well in kind of creating that capacity for the ministry to give the right information at the right time. The other thing that needs to be put across is I really think the government should move away from providing these fertilizers and the input. They need to find a way to push that to the private sector in a better way. Now, if the private sector is able to do that, then you can get a bit of that to make it a social safety net for those that cannot afford. Because at the end of the day, what we want is to encourage every farmer, small or big, to up their production. That's what we need. So that's the way I would look at it. And then if we avoid that, then let the private sector use their own money to bring in these commodities. Then the government can buy a bit of that to help the vulnerable and let the market dictate what's going to happen. Then the financial sector, the banks and the lot, can create products that can help, with financial products that can help those small farmers access those inputs. Then we've got insurance sector needs also to bring up products that will help also mitigate, give that sense risk mitigation on these small farmers. So it's a kind of holistic approach to the whole issue of farming that is going forward. As for the current 2022-2023 farming season, that's gone. That's based on FISIP. But however, we have to really look at, is it working? What lessons have we learned from that, and then move them into the new program?
So, Mr. Bimbe, that was fantastic. Do you think the current government is communicating in an holistic manner policies like FISIP, you know, to the people?
That's a good question. My answer would be really, I don't know. However, having said that, the evidence, however, points to, I think there are challenges in the way information is communicated, or rather, lack of information being communicated.
And
As
as a result, the opposition are taking
yes,
advantage.
the opposition have taken advantage and they are driving the narrative.
The narrative.
So I would want to think that the government and the structures, the party in power can really work on this one, communication. So I would want also to say probably it's very telling that the role of the chief government spokesman, to me, feels really not to make sense in a way. Probably I would rather want to see key ministries or key departments having their spokespeople that can then provide that information to journalists and the press and everybody, and that they could, be holding probably bi-monthly press conferences where they give the position, where we are going, what we've done, where the bottlenecks are, where challenges are, that kind of thing. Then that way, you're going to the government is going to be on top of creating that positive narrative rather than the negative narrative that we have currently.
So, Mr. Bimbe, that was fantastic. So, in essence, what you're saying is you want a situation like in the UK and America, where each government department or ministry has got a specialized sports person who communicates to the public, and then at the same time, they, nobody just wakes up and communicate anything. They work in a, there's an alignment. They work in together. They work properly. You know, not a situation whereby this one communicates this, the other one communicates that, and each spokesperson is communicating according to the ministry or department where that person works, is a specialist in that department. So instead of having one spokesperson who doesn't understand what happens in finance, what happened in agriculture, we have a spokesperson in each government ministry who specializes in that ministry. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to point at. I know there is a spokesperson at Ministry of Finance, and I've listened to what he says, and my surprise is very good. He gives that information that's required, but unfortunately, most of that information that he gives out is mostly to Western powers, i.e., Bloomberg calls or IMF or that kind of thing. It's not for really the general public. I don't know whether that is to do with the level of politicking, where our journalists, our press, they tend to run to politics, anything sensational rather than substance. Or it could be that the language used is not accessible to the general population. I don't understand. So that is very good. However, in most of these departments, which are crucial, and again, if you look at the way the government has been going on right now, there are so many ministries. We only hear about a few of them because some of them are not heard. We don't know what they're doing. So having those kind of roles, I think, would really, really help. And also, I think the party as well, there is this saying that everybody needs to sing from the same hymn book. I think there ought to be that idea of when we speak policy from the top level, when it comes to government, that's the implementing units, the spokespeople can be able to give that information properly. As for the party as well, they should be able to then weave those kind of information that is coming from the various ministries and departments and match them up to the party manifesto and be able to give it out to the people in a way that is understandable, is accessible, everybody can see, and it has to be kind of evidence-based. It has to be verifiable. The information need to be verifiable. That way, again, you're going to starve the opposition and the naysayers with their propaganda, because everyone will know where the information, the good information is. So there is this lack of, I think, that interface between the citizen and the service delivery units is not very clear. For example, if say Ministry of Lands, I don't know whether they have that, it's very clear if you apply for this, it takes so many weeks. This is the information that you need to bring. This is how much you need to pay. It's there. And when somebody applies, they know exactly what to do. I think that those interfaces are very, very critical, because that's how citizens interact with the government, with the service delivery entities of the state and of the local government. So that's probably the way I look at it. So there is work to be done. The new government have done very well in terms on the top level on the economy. They are really pushing. The Ministry of Finance has done a fantastic job. Central Bank is doing a fantastic job. So on the macro level, economic fundamentals, that is working. But again, it's not filtering down in a way that a marketeer would understand. When you talk about inflation coming down, what does that mean in terms of my tomato that I'm selling? What does that mean? So that needs to be kind of breaking down those barriers to accessing that information is very critical. So that's the one I would say. The other thing that we also mentioned was lack of drugs. Again, this is lacking specificity as well. There is this general idea that there are no drugs in health centers. I've seen the Catholic discussing the same thing. But when you read the statement, there isn't anything specific. You cannot solve a problem by generalizing. We need to understand that whenever you criticize, you need to be very specific so that the person or the entity you are criticizing, they are able to reflect and fix that. So, for example, I would be able to say, this is the level of, say, a level 1 hospital. This is the structure. This is the level of, workers that are supposed to be there, the ratios and all sorts of things, the medication and what is there supposed to be. And then be able to, when we criticize, we should be able to be specific and say, such a hospital hasn't got this kind of medicine. Their level of supply is supposed to be this. What is going on? They are supposed to have this number of nurses, but they don't. What is going on?
So, Mr. Bimbe, hold your peace. So, which means there are some KPIs missing somewhere. And also, there's no way, there's no communication between the service provider, which is the government, and the people regarding those KPIs.
Yes, there is that aspect, but also there is talking to the lived experience. So you might find one person who say, I went to the hospital they gave me a prescription for Panadol. That is from one hospital. Another one would have gone to another hospital and got Panadol, but they didn't talk about it. So this is why I'm saying, when we criticize, we need to be specific. I don't believe that really things are that bad, so to speak, is because they are only amplified again by mostly the opposition. But again, you have to go down to the upstream again. It's about procurement. I don't think they really care about the downstream. They don't. All what they are trying to use is inflammatory language and amplifying what is really not supposed to be the case. So that's why we see all these videos of negative things. My mother went to the hospital, they didn't get, but that's just one specific. How about the rest? So I think we need to be able, and I urge probably the press, the journalists, to be very methodical in the way they look at this thing. And also the providers themselves, the hospital, to be open to providing that information.
Yeah, there was an article on Monday, the 14th of November, in Diggers, which says health facilities will be fully stocked by the first quarter of 2023. And that came from ZAMSA. So does that mean they are not fully stocked at the moment?
Well, that is again a generality. When you look deeper, again, it's the way the information was provided. It just talked about how much money they've spent for that, how much contract of that. There's again, this is what the PF are more interested in. To them, they'll be interested who got that contract, who got one, rather than what it is. I would have loved them to break it down, how much Panadol do we need per each unit or whatever, and be able to say, this is what we're going to supply. I don't think we've literally run out. I don't think so. There is just this probably stopgap here and there. But once that is, as they say, that by 2023 first quarter, everything should be in. But again, it's very, very difficult to kind of verify whether that is going to happen, because the breakdown is just based on figures, money-wise, rather than on quantities of the actual drugs and the type of drugs that they are. I believe maybe that information was there. Maybe News Diggers didn't give it. They are only interested in the contract money because, as we know, PF, that's what they are always interested in.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, Mr. Bimbe. But what I think is, to me, UPND, our party, needs to be more cohesive. They are doing very, very good things, but I don't think they are communicating properly. They need to be more cohesive in the way they communication, in the way they communicate. Especially the three wings of government: State House, the president there is on top of things, but the problem comes when it comes to government, and the party. To me, they need to know how to talk about certain policies in their respective wings or government ministries, and like that, we'll avoid the miscommunication from the opposition. I would give you an example, and I want you to comment on that. GBM talks to the press, the moment he heard that the government, with the direction of the president, they are going to audit. Obviously, this is a forensic audit. They're going to audit Minister of Defense. And GBM said this is illegal because security information, will be in the hands of the foreigners. But what GBM didn't explain properly, didn't know that Minister of Defense can be investigated, can be audited, and Dr. Charles Ngoma responded to GBM. Can you just make some comment about that?
Yeah, thank you very much for that observation. Yeah, this thing has been running around like I don't know on this security, and I think it's not the first time this idea of protecting security. We know, even during Wanawasa, we remember the what was that, the Matrix, or the Post did. It's the whole idea of this kind of ministries should not be audited because of security thing. I'll tell you one thing. There is public information about the military strength of Zambia. It's there. It's available. We know how many helicopters they have. We know how many missiles they are there. We know the strength of the actual soldiers. It's all public information. So I don't see why they'll say it's going to hinge on exposing the security of the country. No. The whole thing is about hiding, trying to run away from being accountable. They claim that the Constitution does not allow auditing of those some departments or ministries by private or foreign firms. However, they are forgetting, whenever they cry that they do that, they forget that there is a caveat within the Constitution that says, provided there's no security implications. Look, in the current war, what is going on in Ukraine and Iran and Russia. Russia bought military equipment, the kamikaze drones from Iran. It was a secret transaction, but how come the world knew about it? Despite them refusing, the world knew about it. So there's no secret about where you buy arms. And besides, buying military equipment is a kind of, is well monitored by various organizations. You cannot just go and buy those things anyhow without a record somewhere being kept. So unless our former government, they bought things from the black market, they bought arms on the black market or whatever, maybe they will be worried about that. But what they are worried about is being exposed, because they never thought that those entities will be audited that way. The second thing is, those auditing firms, though they bear the names of international names, they are actually run as partnerships. They are Zambian companies.
They are franchises owned by Zambians.
And they are run by Zambians. So that argument, to me, doesn't wash. We just need to get to the bottom of the road that was going on, so that we put in measures while we collect what was taken away. We prosecute those that are found wanting, but at the same time, we put in measures going forward that will limit those kind of excesses.
So, Mr. Bimbe, that was fantastic. It looks to me the Minister of Defense, like the Minister of Health, was a cash cow. And if you look at the statements Munduvile made, the statement Davis Mwela, who is the former Minister of Defense, made, this is propaganda now, that the auditing of the Ministry of Defense will result in 90% of the PF members arrested. So they've already started, looking for sympathy. So don't you think these people now are scared? They thought this ministry will never be audited because of security implications. Now they are going to be audited. So don't you think some of these guys who are running to become presidents of PF to use that as persecution? I'm persecuted because I'm running as a president.
Mm. Yeah.
What do you know? Because to me, that's another form of propaganda now. Because they've now realized that once that forensic auditing is done, people are
Mm.
going to be arrested because they never thought it was going to be audited.
Yeah. 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 That's true. If what was quoted as being said by Honorable Chama is true, then that's quite telling. Uh, so within the government, within the last government, we can see the areas that were really conduits for uh, whatever we might call corruption or whatever. I would say, well, there was a bit of mismanagement here and there, but also, overinflating prices. So you're looking at the Ministry of Defense, of course, the intelligence themselves, the Home Office. We remember before the election, we saw those trucks and military grade equipment coming in, which of course we didn't need. And today it's 1 year in the new government. They've never been used. We haven't seen them. So the question is, what was the business case behind ordering those kind of things, other than to get money? The other ministry that they used a lot was obviously the infrastructure one.
Mm.
You've already mentioned health. We've talked about agriculture for FISIP. They tried with the social cash transfer, but because that money was the bigger chunk was from the cooperating partners, it backfired big time because the cooperating partners cried foul. So at the end of the day, that wasn't touched. And there are these quangos, the national road agencies, and the others that became part of cash cows, so if you want to say that. So with what they are saying now is, I think they did quite a lot of damage in the Ministry of Defense with the thinking, though wrongly, that those entities cannot be audited. By so thinking that if they can be audited by local people, we know these guys, they've got money. It's very easy to pay off some of those people. I mean, we've seen cases that there are examples of that happening. So that this idea now of bringing in external entities that are only interested in their fee rather than a backhander, they are going to do a thorough job because they've got a reputation to protect as well. So that has made them jittery. Hence, all this propaganda, and also hence the opportunists also jumping in, the lawyers and the others, knowing that there is money to be made. There's this group that is really desperate. They are trying to run away from going to prison, and we can make money out of them. So this is what has created all this misinformation, is in overdrive and that kind of thing. But I think the government is very methodical. I think it hasn't reacted badly and that kind of thing. So the other thing that I can bring up is the 200,000 kwacha, the PF aspiring candidates paid for nomination. I think the message that came out there was, the UPND government is saying they need to find out, about this money and arrest it. And that was another propaganda that was peddled by our friends in the PF, where they're saying, well, the government is demeaning the Zambians. Don't they know that a Zambian can have this kind of money? The argument to me should have been or should be, which they are missing. The point isn't about you cannot have the 200,000. Anyone can have 200,000. No problem with that. The problem is the way the transactions were carried out. I think that's where the problem is. You cannot go to a bank, withdraw the cash, and then take it to another entity who is going to deposit that cash again. So you take it out of the one bank and then they go and deposit back in the bank. Why not just do a bank transfer, which is more efficient, which is easier and safer? And for some of the candidates, they are even former bankers. So where was the ethics as a professional? You cannot just do that. So that is the question. Then the question becomes, if you took cash, where did you withdraw that cash from? Or did that cash really come from a bank, or it came from the house? That's where the question is. It's not about, I cannot have this kind of money. And this is where the propaganda comes in. That's not the question, right? So when it comes to persecution versus accountability, to me, everyone vying for political power, and I think even Mr. Lungu is trying to hold on to the position in PF, is this idea that if you have a political position, we've seen even small parties with one-man show, if they are called to account, they are going to call political persecution because they are politicians, so to speak. This is where, again, there's muddling of that essence. It's about accountability. Whatever we do, we just account for that. So I don't see that as persecution, as per se. It's just, people are just saying, just tell us, how you became so successful that we can also replicate your success. It's as simple as that. If you can tell us how you became so successful, then of course we'll suspect there's something is wrong. But instead of answering to that question, we hear the lamest excuses that I've ever heard. Things like, I owned a Mercedes-Benz in 1922 or whatever. I've been a diplomat for so many years. I've been in parliament. Nobody cares about that. Really, nobody cares about that. All what you have to do is, here's the documentation. Here's what I earned. Here's how I invested.
And here is the tax I've paid.
Here's the tax paying.
So much tax I've paid.
That's all. It's as simple as that. But it's, again, obfuscation or hiding things and creating so many narratives. And the gullible are actually going for it. That's why I said in the first segment that, every citizen should really take keen interest in this. It's bigger than what we think. It can lead to bad consequences for the country.
Yeah, no, it's you correct, Mr. Bimbe, because I couldn't understand how somebody who was a banker, is an accountant, whatever, or economist, goes and withdraw 200,000, unless that 200,000 was kept in the house, and go and pay, carrying that money in a plastic bag. It's like PF didn't have money in the coffers, and then they wanted people to bring cash, so they can launder the money, or somebody gave them the money, donated the money to the party, and gave it to them and say, go and pay, because it doesn't make sense. Because imagine if he was attacked and he was with his family, because cash is very risky. Imagine if he was attacked and the police didn't come in time. Would he blame the police not to come in time because he's been attacked because he was carrying money? So it to me, it doesn't make sense. The other thing, Mr. Bimbe, which I've noticed is, like, you mentioned about two types of people. There are some people who are trying to cash, like the Chirufya Tayalis of this world. What they are trying to do is to cash, from, they're using propaganda to cash the money. Today, this morning, Chilufya Tayali was live. I don't know whether it was this morning or yesterday, where he was saying during Lungu's government, if the wife wants to go to Ethiopia, he was saying it will cost about $5,000, for the wife to go and visit Ethiopia and come back. In that government, he will just go to Lungu. In the Lungu government, $10,000, they will give it to him. Just like that. At this government, Vakaso. So if things were done like that, who gives you $10,000 just like that? So where was that money coming from? People's money.
Yeah.
So these people, they've got so much money, they can give somebody $10,000 just like that to send the wife to Ethiopia. So that's the same things they want to see in this government.
Yeah. Yeah, you are right. Unfortunately, I haven't listened to our good friend Mr. Tayari. I don't usually follow him. Look, in the previous government, we saw people flashing money, some even burning it, and all sorts of things. And today, what people are saying is there's no money in circulation. Now, is that true or is that false? I don't know. What I want to say is, I think every money that is in circulation has to be backed by production. You cannot just bring money out of the thin air, That's pretty bad. So I would assume that was what was going on, in the sense that people were put on payroll, as we've come to learn, that there were ghost workers here and there, overinflated contracts, and this money was actually in Congole, and it was just being dished out. That money was never backed up by any production, and hence the problem that we are in now. So this is where the problem is. For those that are claiming that the government needs to pay suppliers, I think from what I'm gathering is the government is willing and is going to pay the genuine suppliers. And this is why there is this audit of the local debt. DMUU was one of those entities that, gave out so much money during COVID. And listening to the parliamentary committee, there was a lot of abuse in a lot of these ministries. So all what the government is saying is, we just want to know if, the contract was issued genuinely. If it was it value for money? Were the goods provided? Did you supply? Who signed for what? If all that ticks, you get your money. So why is the jittery? Look at the amount of money that was, they claim that petrol fuel was what, 17 kwacha, now is 20 something kwacha. But what they're not saying is actually that top up, that difference was paid for through a subsidy, which they never paid to where they were giving to those suppliers. Hence this huge debt of over $700 million. And PF will never say that. Or what they'll say is, it was cheap that time, it's now expensive. In a similar way that what you've alluded to, where somebody talks about you cannot audit these entities by private company, yet forgetting to talk about the other bit, which says provided. So it's the same way of thinking. You have to think about this. In the PF, they ruled by propaganda. We know that. How many times did we hear 500,000 jobs being created? All the time. How many times did we hear that Mulungushi Textiles was going to be opened? so many times, but nothing happened. So they've mastered that art of deceit and propaganda. And they were in power that time. So they could shut up anybody because they had the money, they could pay off. Where they couldn't, they would unleash the police, they would unleash the cadres. The citizens were quiet. They couldn't, you can't push them to account. Now that they're in opposition, they've mastered that and they've realized the current government is yet to get grasp of that. But I would shudder to think that the new government should also take that route of propaganda. They need to provide, they need to take the route of being transparent, being accountable, and providing verifiable information that has got evidence. That way, citizens will happily vote for them.
Yeah, and Mr. Bimbe, you're right. A lot of they're taking, and mostly they take advantage because the public does not know what they are talking about, and also the government is also not properly communicating. Let me just read a bit of the Public Audit Act, CAP 378 of the laws of Zambia, the ones they are talking about. So it's saying in the performance of the duties under this act, the Auditor General or any public officer, agent, or specialist consultant authorized by him shall have access to all books, returns, reports, department, private institution under the audit. And then it also says access at any reasonable time of the day of the premises, any statutory corporation, public company, department, or public institution under the audit, examination, or inspection. Yeah, the Auditor General shall not authorize any agent or specialist consultant to have access books to any reports or other documents, or to enter upon premises of any component of the defense forces or Zambia security intelligence. But that's the point they were relying on. And then it also says, or to have access of any books, records, reports, other documents, or to enter upon the premises other than those mentioned in paragraph A. But then there is a point in that act which says if such access or entry is likely going to prejudice security, defense, international relationships, relations of the republic, or the investigation or detection of offenses. So it's talk about detection of offenses. Involve disclosure of any matters or deliberations of a secret or confidential nature of the cabinet or any subcommittee of the cabinet. Then it says, take note of the literal word if. The auditor general can authorize an agent or specialist consultant to audit the defense force or Zambia security agents if there is no security risk. So who determines that there is or there is no security risk? It will be the defense force, if it will be the defense and security wings themselves. Their commander-in-chief is their Republican president. The president, therefore, has power to permit the Attorney General to audit the defense and security wings, just like FTJ Chilova had power to declassify the State House tunnels. So if it's the president, if it is not a secret if the president says so. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, that's the comment from our good friend.
Yeah, Dr. Charles Ngoma. That the last
Yeah.
part was a comment from him.
Yeah, I think he was right on the money. That's true. Of course, they could be a criteria of what they follow to say whether that is state secret or based on that definition. But as it is, really, what we are seeing is not about that. As Honorable GBM said, they say they are going to audit supply of food to the military. Food is also a security aspect, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's totally different when you talk about security. That what you've read says it clearly, what it means. Of course, you can expand that, and I don't know what the expansion of those aspects are. However, what is there is just auditing the movement of money, the supply, the contracts. It's not per se, going to jeopardize anything else. And also, when you look at, as I said earlier, when you look at military capabilities, that information is open source. Of course, there's certain information that will be maybe current operational plans or how we defend the borders, what are the tactics. Yes, that cannot be audited. They cannot be audited. However, if you have such a thing, maybe it could say we'll position maybe 8 or 100 military personnel there, will have so many tanks there in the border, whatever. Those will be secret. But the overall thing about how many tanks does Zambia have, that information is there. It's how
where did they buy them from? How much did they cost?
I mean that information, if you Google, you will find it. Buying military equipment is not a secret. Why do countries like the US announce how many missiles they have, what they are developing? What they hide is the technology that goes in there. The reason is having that information publicly also acts as a deterrent. So an enemy will be scared because they know, oh, you've got this massive bomb. That's the reason they do that. And also, it's just easy to monitor proliferation of these kind of things. The African Union have got this silencing the guns. We saw what happened in Darfur. Africa is prone to these small fire armed conflicts using small arms. So we need to know that shouldn't be really private. That's why I said earlier, unless the government, forbids that it never happened, that they bought arms from warlords or on the black market.
Or inflated at an inflated price.
Well, of course, then yeah, people will be worried, but that shouldn't also be a secret, because that's wrong.
So, Mr. Bimbe, if people are, because obviously, I think one of the reasons why these big private law accounting firms have been used, because an investigation of that nature might require forensic auditors, and Attorney General might not have those specialists. But these auditing firms or consulting firms, they are so big. They are supported by the big 5 auditing firms, so they can easily bring specialists from abroad to come and do a forensic audit. Yeah, and then the point is, after this audit is done by private people, professional people, and if people are arrested, is it prosecution or accountability?
To me, it's simple. I mean, that's accountability. We just want to know, as a citizen, what really was going on. That's all. I think that everyone, because remember, most of this money was debt. And who is going to pay that debt back? Is it our children, it's our grandchildren? Surely we need to know. They need to know what they are going to inherit. Did it work for them? How come we've got so much of this debt, yet we don't have children are not going to school. So it's those kind of things. And that's what strengthens democracy, is just being open and being accountable. So to call it persecution, I don't think so. And as we said earlier, what's so difficult to just say, here's the document, why fight it? I remember when our current president, if you remember correctly, he was accused of so many things. People brought out documents and whatever, and it turned out to be false. Even the late Michael Sadame, so rest in peace, splashed the current president's bank account details in the press. To me, that was persecution, because there was no basis to do that. But here, there is a basis of why these audits are taking place. So how can it be persecution?
Yeah, because you can't just wake up and arrest people. You need to have evidence. You need to have data to prove that. And the other thing about Bimbe is, Mr. Bimbe, is there's this thing that this government is dictatorial, and now they are arresting and harassing politicians. Some Zambians are buying it. Chilufetari was in prison. A lot of people have been arrested. Mumbipiri is in prison. And I've heard a funny story that Kalava was arrested for buying food on the market, which is a lie. So all this propaganda is coming from the PF. And the government seems to be quiet. Or we just firefighting. So it's like these guys, they've come up with such a well-coordinated propaganda. And the government is just firefighting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's a very interesting point, Mr. Chilufya. We just have to be careful when we say the government is quiet, because we have to run an organizational structure that is, respects the boundaries of who is to do what and who is doing what. So I think we need to take a leaf from mature democracies on how they do run these things. I can understand why they don't want to be talking about it, but surely providing updates once in a while is helpful. I mean, we've seen, for example, the current happenings with the former US president in the US. The Justice Department, who are running the investigations, and the other entities that are running the investigation, they put out statements, they put out detailed statements, and they keep updating the people on what's really going on. And I think it's key that the entities that are supposed to provide that, for example, in this case, the police, should be able to provide that information constantly. DEC and others. I know, DEC, ACC started producing those lists of who's going to court, and they do issue those statements when they've arrested someone. But what is missing is the continuous update. It's more like they release a statement and then it dies.
They don't follow it.
These cases can take long, yes, but just, some sort of updates. They don't need to be really someone talking about it. They could just be put on the website what each case is going on, at what stage it's at. Because citizens are getting jittery. If they don't see something resembling, a court process taking place, or what is really going on, they'll conclude that either the state has no evidence, or the state is playing games, they're trying to cut deals, And generally then you come to that point. They'll think, yeah, it's just persecution.
There's
So
there's a case, Mr. Bimbe. Let
with
me
that,
just hold your peace. The- I think it was last week. I think it's a case of Kampiongo, where the magistrate rebuked anti-corruption not to waste their time because they didn't bring their witnesses,
mhm,
and a lot of citizens were not happy that they don't have confidence in
mhm,
the fighting of corruption.
mhm, mhm,
They are saying people will be arrested because there are people like Chirufya Tayali. They want to be arrested so that they can now tell the world that this government is arresting us, is persecuting us, and also to raise money because they want to raise money.
mhm.
So what should the police do? Because if the more they arrest these people for like Chirufya Tayali for uttering nonsense, the more they will be telling the public that they are persecuting us.
Yes, I mean, there is a divide in responsibility at that point. So on initial arrest and creating the case, of course, that's the job of the police or the law enforcement agency, whatever. Once the matter is in court, it's the responsibility of the public prosecutor. So probably those should also be given maybe a way of having a spokesperson to try and also give an account of what's really going on. Because at that point, it's not the job of the police to talk about a case that is already in the police because they are essentially witnesses to the case. So there is a bit there that needs to be done in the way information is provided constantly. So if the Anti-Corruption Commission arrests someone, they pass the file to the DPP, the prosecution is going on. At that point, ACC becomes a witness in that court case. Therefore, they cannot continue issuing statements. So could it be the case that the DPP's office or chambers, as they call it, should they be the ones then appraising the people, or could it be someone else somewhere? So that's, again, I don't know how those things can be put in place, because all what we've seen through this discussion is there is a lack of information. And that's why citizens are getting jittery. They are creating all sorts of things. And wherever there is a vacuum of information, propagandists and bad people, bad actors will jump in and
Miss,
give their own narrative. And a lie spoken once, twice, 3 times can become fact. Not really fact, but fact in inverted commas. So that's what is going on.
yeah, because the point here is they taking advantage of
The vacuum.
the vacuum, and then the opposition, they seem to be controlling the narrative. It's like they've got a strategy. This is what we're gonna do. This is what we do next. And what should the government do? The government, the party, and the presidency. What
Yeah.
should they do to 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 alleviate this situation? Because the longer this propaganda continues, the more, because a lot of people, some people have started believing this propaganda. Even, I've seen some comments here. There's a lot of arrest of the opposition, persecution, and some people are saying there's no medication in hospital.
Mhm.
And then we rarely see the government coming and clearly, explain to the people, not just clearly, constantly updating the people what is happening. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think in everything we do, we might not think certain information is relevant to give out. But at the end of the day, it is relevant. So the classic here is, how do you manage expectations? I think this is one aspect in everything that we're trying to, as the government is trying to push across to the citizens, is how they manage that expectation. Now, to manage expectation is not just the end result, it's the process as well. The process needs to be seen to be transparent and visible. So I've always argued, I think, on this forum that we need, the government can really, they've done amazingly well, but there's no visibility of what they're doing, you know. So there are methods that can be done other than, you know, what we talked about, the KPIs and all that. There is also
and communicating on Facebook, Mr. Bimbe. Let me just cut you.
And I'll come to that.
Is communicating on Facebook the best way of communicating
I'll come to that one. And also they you know, yeah, I'm losing track. So they need to be visible, and also using, you know, real people, stories of change. You know, I nearly cried when I watched this young lady at State House saying, I've got a job as a teacher, and guess what? I did not need to pay her something. That is quite powerful as an impact. Why? Because it can be attributed to a human being who's lived that experience. We need to do more of that to bring out the positive. You know, I've seen a picture of old lady going to school today because of free education. Those are real stories, livable stories by people. So that's what I would think the party or the government or whoever is running the communication should tap in. So it's the visibility of what is going on. Now, when you come to Facebook and all social media, for us who are working in this field of digital knowledge, we know that these social media are amplifiers for information. So what they give you is an ability to give out information at the moment, right? Because they are ephemeral model, they are ephemeral data sources. Once it's there, come 2-3 days later, you cannot see it again. So the president posts a lot of nice things, but they all disappear afterwards. So as people like us who are actually rooting for this government to do well, we kind of get lost because we can't repackage some of those nice things that the president is doing. And this is where a certain place or digital place, you know, where these things could be archived so that everyone can go there. In a classic way where I work in this kind of field, we have repositories of data, of content, of whatever, but we use Facebook or Twitter to push people to those things. We say, hey, here's what we are doing. This is what we've done.
So you post a link, you add a link.
You add a link to where all the information is going to be. For example, why we did this, what was the thinking, what was the data that we used to come up with this policy, you know, who are benefiting, all those kind of nice stories, they are all packaged together. That way, you're going to place the opposition in a very bad way because
so just hold your peace, Mr. Bimbe, before you continue. So the president on top there is doing all that. The problem lies in the ministries and at the party level, because they now need to disseminate that information in an holistic manner to the public, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the whole operation because it's relying on social media. Social media can mislead, especially Twitter. You only have so many characters you can do. what you would expect is probably the State House website to have everything the president posts. They probably get a copy and stick it there in a kind of nice way, so that you always have reference to that. And the more information the government can put across, where you and me can be able to go there and see that information. You and me, we can provide, again, that information in a good way. For example, if you can just use Google Translate, create a small website. Google Translate can get that information, provide it in any language.
In any language.
So, for example, unfortunately, with Google Translate at the moment, it's only Chichewa that is there. Tonga is coming.
From Malawi, in Malawi.
But however, what I'm trying to say here is you need a single source of truth sitting somewhere. All social media should always be referenced to that. But that single source of truth needs to have all the information. If you have that, if somebody then comes and say, oh, there are no farming inputs. No, that's just a statement. It sounds innocent, but actually it's quite loaded, right? But if then that information is already there, this is how much we procured, this is in this depot, we've got that, we've distributed to that, you know, people could just say, even journalists could just go there, pick the right statistics, pick the right information, and say, oh, by the way, this is what it is. But it's so hard at the moment to get such kind of information. And that, to me, is the problem. It's not necessarily, I think it's both State House, government department, ministries, as well as the party. They are relying so much on the ephemeral channel, which is social media. Social media is not good for stickiness of information. Even a researcher or anyone, you can't use that kind of information. It has to be somewhere. That's what mature governments do. That's why in most countries you've got, in the US, you've got the National Archives, in the UK, in places where all this information is curated in a way that, you know, anyone can go there and see. You cannot just issue, if somebody issues a statement, oh, we've created, like in the PF, we've created 500,000 jobs. I should be able to go to some place and say, oh, so where are these jobs? What's the breakdown? You know, where are the examples? All that kind of information. Just a statement doesn't make sense, especially maybe to me. But to a lot of people that are so used to just picking things on social media, it's a problem. It's also a problem because we've seen people trying to acquire likes and whatever, thinking they're going to get money by advertising. They just put 2 lines. That's not providing information. That's misleading. But if the government is able to have this kind of approach, I think really the opposition will be put down. That's my take on that one.
That's fantastic, Mr. Bimbe. We're now getting closer to the end of the program, but we've been joined by one of the Bakwetu crews, who is no other than Mr. Mukelevai. Mr. Mukelevai, welcome to our show today.
How are you, Mr. Mukelevai? Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very fine. Thank you. How is everyone? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. So I hope you've been following the program. Have you got any comment, any question you want to say about, or any specific thing you want to talk about?
No, I think most of the things you've already spoken, and I don't want to subtract. But what I'm just worried is the level of the freedom that has been given to everyone on the media to propagate or inciting violence or inciting the military or people to go against the authority or to make the current government have difficulties in governing the country. Already we can tell what has happened to Katete in Katete. All those are coming as a result of people that are allowed to come onto the media and utter words or demean the authorities and call them useless, call them dictators, call them names, and then the average, or rather certain individuals that have not uh, that cannot think properly, they would simply take every word that comes literally and think it is true. The government or the people running the government, they are incompetent, they are corrupt, they are not they are dictators, all those things. And that's why you find that when the authority tries to go and uh, maintain law and order, they are attacked. The people, the citizen, have even the audacity to go and start attacking the police officers. To me, they are getting some energy somewhere from these political political leaders that are busy trying to demean or dehumanize the president and the leadership, the current leadership. We know what they're trying to do is to prevent themselves from being exposed, because what currently is going on in this government, no wonder they are quiet, because there's a lot to reveal to the nation. But they are trying to maybe choose and see what kind of information should we choose to avoid anarchy. Because if they come out and start giving every details that these guys committed, I promise you, many Zambians will be upset and they would want to go and either attack those individuals that stole. So this current government probably is also trying to look into those issues, say, how do we share this information to the public? Should we give them at once, or should we edit and give the information that we feel may not bring confusions? Otherwise, there's a lot. You heard what happened in the Ministry of Defense. We have been talking about Ministry of Health. There's too much corruption in Ministry of Health. And when we talk about Ministry of Defense, look at the injunctious behavior coming out from the opposition, calling national security. What? Kanshi abantu kuliofu balefisa. They were busy trying to hide behind, and now things are coming out. And that's why we are urging you, the government, the current government today, to say, do not starve us with information. We are craving for this information. We want to also know. We are privy to that information too. We are entitled. You can't just keep such information to yourselves. Give the people that put you in power. I know you have a lot to do. You have so much at stake. I even pity you. Imagine, of all presidents in this continent, our own beloved president goes and sits with fellow passengers in a commercial airline. You know how African president, with our status, the way we love status, and he is a millionaire, self-made millionaire. He can afford his own private jet. He can afford even to buy the biggest plane on this planet. But he choose to sit in with other fellow human beings and travel. Who does that? And then you come and demonize him to say he's a liar, he's a dictator. Please, Mwevantuns, Zambians, we should not allow this. And thank you to the police officers for having acted swiftly when that young man was busy insulting or inciting insurrection. they did well by arresting him or picking him up. Unfortunately, he claims to have been beaten or tortured. We did not see that, because when somebody is tortured by the police, if we have a torture, ngali mu chipatala uli muntu uli. But today, we hear a lot of propaganda going around. Kansha abantu kuliofe barechita protect. So we should not allow such nonsense to continue. And we want the authority to step up, to pull up their socks and arrest these people that are trying to cause trouble. Nabena Katete won't save those residents that decided to take the law into their own hands. Remember this: police officers have memories like a memory of an elephant, because they are trained. They will pick you one by one and bring you to justice. Whether you hide under Chinyao, whether you hide they will get you, because they know who beat them. And you are lucky that officers did not retaliate, because they have the right to kill if their lives are in danger. But we never saw anybody losing their lives. It's them that suffered at the hand of the public. So you should thank the police also for having decided to act or put their lives in harm's way. And officers, please help your fellow officers. And your president, your land, your opposition, uleshta praise ama thugs that beat the police. Shame on him. He should be ashamed of himself. I think let me end there for now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mukelebai. On the issue of Chilufya Tahali, I think Chilufya Tahali should deserve to be arrested, and his comments to me borders on sedition. Those comments were so serious that they are treasonable. You cannot incite the public to rise against the government, to go in arms and rise against the government. That was so serious. I don't know whether Chilufya is, I don't know whether he's down, he doesn't know what he's doing, or maybe because he's being paid, or he wants to be paid. And he has been paid because people raised a lot of money for him. But what he said is not democracy. It's not freedom of speech. It borders on sedition, which is treasonable. And
Bachirufia, have you ever heard any of these opposition, any of them talking about debt restructuring?
no.
Have you ever heard them talk about their programs that they performed and where they stopped and how they wish those programs are to be done by the current government?
No, they won't talk about that, because it's not the way that's not the way they operate. Those guys, they even when they were in government, it was about propaganda and divide and rule. So they would never talk about about that. Thank you so much, Mukelevai, about that. Mr. Bimbe, before we close, the propaganda has reached the top notch now. I've noticed on a lot of PF Facebook sites, they are saying HH pays £56,000 a year, which is equivalent to 1 million kwacha a year, for his son, who is studying at one of the UK universities. But the question is, it's not the government paying, it's his own money. So what are they trying to tell the people?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through this. I mean, it's all about misinformation, propaganda, trying to make people rise up and whatever. If that's the case, that's a very bad thing. What the president is paying for his son, he's a parent, he's made his money, he's providing that. That should be relevant to anybody else. As if it's in his line of duty, he's providing leadership that is needed at this moment in time. We just wish, some of us, that his leadership should have started longer, earlier than this. Probably the country would have been different. Now, I can understand people getting really, really annoyed with this freedom. Freedom is essential, but it has to be accountable. And I think in any given democracies, where we live here and everywhere, people have got the right to offend. Okay? People have got a right to annoy. That should happen. The problem we have in Zambia is we had the Public Order Act and the cyber, which were actually abused. And because of that, every government that comes in is looked at it from that point of view. People continue poking. It's good that the president has said he doesn't want that law that says the president should not be offended, or so to speak, disrepute is to be scrapped. Yes. But at the moment, it's the law. Right? So, of course, you expect, as it is, you expect anyone who breaks it, to be visited. However, my view is, I think the police can, I don't know how they can do it, a bit of being cautious on that. So I can understand if the president, people feel the president is being insulted on it, which is not illegal, by the way, to insult, as long as it doesn't cause security problems. But that law is very, very difficult to define what it means, bringing the president in disrepute. That's why I don't like it. However, if the police then are the ones that have been put in a very bad position, because if they don't act, say a UPND cadre or whoever sympathizer goes to the police and say, Mr. X and X or Miss X and says, did this, can you arrest? They've got to go and do that because that's the law. Immediately they don't do that, that party will say the police is full of PF, whatever. If the police takes that and goes and arrests, those who are arrested are going to say dictatorship and all sorts of things. So I don't know how we can bring that to a level where, the police are able to act to, to kind of put it across to both sides that it's really not a bad thing. That to me requires a lot of sensitization and just talking to people, and the police being there, just saying this is bad, this is whatever. We are a Christian country, based on that, rather than issuing threats, which I don't think that's the right thing. The dictatorship kind of thing, I think this can be, again, fought in a way. I keep coming down to information. If we have these statistics open, transparently, every country has this, you can measure year to year how many arrests were done, how many people was killed in that, and categorize that. If we have that data available, that will speak that actually this government is not dictatorial. Because, when we talk, we use emotions, and we are always subjective. There's no evidence. That's why this thing flies. So again, I'll urge the police or whoever to put out all these statistics. We know what happened in the previous government. You know, we can just look how many firearms. So for example, you can go to statistics as much as riots or how many firearms were discharged against the people last year, in the previous government, and today. That tells you that this dictatorship nonsense is not there, but we need that evidence to be there. Just justifying or unjustifying by talking is not correct. It's not going to be helpful. The Katete issue, though, is very, very unfortunate. What happened? It shouldn't have happened. I think they've resolved it, which is a good thing. No life was lost. That should also give us lessons. What lessons can we learn to avoid this? And I'm sure if there is lessons, I think it's very, very important to learn. We need to develop a community policing approach. That's what it tells me. Citizens need to be, happy with the police, talk to the police, be knowing what is going on. As long as there are elements also within each party or the police or whatever, from what I've gathered, I've heard that murder suspect was released. People got annoyed. So it sounds to me no information was provided. In any policing, if I'm aggrieved, my daughter or my son is killed or whatever, they arrest someone. Before they release that someone, the police liaison will come to me and tell me about it. Give me all the details what happened. If I meet that person, I would understand why they did that. I'll be hurt, but I would understand. So that is what is lacking, is this talking to each other. That's what we need. We can fight these things, not fire by fire. I think we are going to destroy our democracy. We are just growing. It's a very dangerous. We are in a country that is divided at the moment. The president is trying to unify, but the opposition is trying to push towards that division to save their own skin. Not necessarily they care about the people, mind you. They don't. It's about wanting to protect themselves, the money they've looted, scared of going to jail. And then on top of that, you've got opportunists that have smelt the money, that this group is really desperate. Pay me something, I'm going to say something. And because I'm a party leader, if I'm arrested, I'm going to cry persecution. It's a game to them. So the government just needs to be providing, all what we're asking for is not the details, it's just the progress report. What is happening? I think that's what most citizens want. We know cases take long, from investigation, going to court, witnesses, and all sorts of things. It's just giving, it's not a running commentary, it's just a progress report. I don't think that is so difficult to provide that. And this, to me, I feel is going to help a lot in bridging the gaps, in kind of flooding that space that is missing credible information with credible information. Then we are going to have a situation where propaganda and misinformation does not take root. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. Mr. Mkalevai, 2 minutes, closing remarks.
Thank you very much for Wachirufia, Nibo Bimbe. What I can say what I can request the government is that in most homes, in many homes, in our home dwellings, we have rules, and we also have the government that has given us rules and to protect ourselves and our children. And our children, most of the time, they may go step beyond or violate those rules. And as parents, those days before, parents used to, I think our generation, we used to be whacked, beaten, corporal punishment. We used to be punished. But as time evolves, now it's the way of word of mouth or come up with a certain other form of punishment of in disciplining, trying to instill discipline in our kids. And the same thing goes to the government. That if you can't beat us, because we are human rights is protected, we are protected by our bills of right. Let there be other ways. Time out, like we give to kids. Yes, we can come up with certain rules that can govern and protect individuals and save us from any illicit information that are coming that may divide us. So we want you, the government, to come forward to open up, like we are putting across or crying to you. We know that you are busy. You are barely in 1 year in an office. You are a year plus in an office. And I don't understand why we are so in a rush. We want to see you fulfilling all those promises that you made. Little did you know, we know that you never knew what you were going to find in the government coffers. And right now, we are really feeling sorry for you for spending sleepless nights just to make those promises that you made, to fulfill those promises that you made, despite or under these difficult circumstances. So we want you people, the government, the people in authority, to please, let's share the progress that you are doing. And also I want to ask the journalists in Zambia, do not chase information that are going to divide the nation. Chase information that will put hope, that brings hope and peace and tranquility in our country. Running to go and cover Chirufya Tayari, who is being apprehended, that is not peace. That's why you find that you ended up being locked up because you, one of those journalists that were locked up, you went and started filming. I don't even know how you reached there. Who gave you information? Meanwhile, we have people in compounds that are struggling with drainage system. Talk about those things. Go to the government, ask them question, what are you doing about this? Instead of running to people, useless creatures that are trying to divide the nation. So I want you, the journalist, to take another step, to be investigative journalists, not just journalists who are just, once you are given too much, then you start reporting or dancing to the tune of the people that gave you too much. When you know that there's information, that's why you are losing even your respect. People don't believe you what you say. Even if you ask those questions, nobody will believe you. Because there's too much propaganda, there's too much falsehood, there's too much fake news. So please, journalists, you are the link between the people and the government. We want you to go out there, ask on our favor. And you lawyers, interpret laws. Let's talk about these laws that are busy being told that they are being blamed that they are violating other people's rights. Come to the podium. Let's talk about these things. Let's discuss. Let's engage one another. Attacking one another, attacking, demonizing is not the best way to run this country. At the end of the day, this is our motherland that we need to protect and preserve for the future generation. So why are we failing our children? Why do we want to divide our nation? Why? Look at us. We are talking, we are in the diaspora. because we can't stand the drama going on back home. You may call us cowards, but what can you do when our own fellow brothers, they're failing to reason, to bring some kind of reason to maintain this peace that we have enjoyed for 58 years? It can drop and there can be problems from what we can see. So we want you, our politicians, please nurture your tongues, edit your words. Don't just speak anyhow just because you want to show or you want to have likes on Facebook or anywhere. So behave. Sean Tembo, behave. Shimba Kambwili, behave. Chirufatayali, behave. Savoy Mboel, behave. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukalevai. Mr. Bimbe, 2 minutes, closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mukalevai. It was, yeah, straight to the point. We need order. We do really, I mean, we need to age every citizen really to take keen interest in what is going on in the country, because we live it. We think these are clowns. They're actually gathering momentum. And once that erupts, it will be very, very, very difficult to contain. And to fight it, we might even end up making mistakes, which will even inflame the situation further. I think we need to be careful also how we handle it. I kind of like the way the president takes it. He doesn't get annoyed with it. He listens. He knows about those things because on different fora, he talks about them. But in a way, in a nice way. We've seen he's even congratulating opposition parties that he's worked with, president, that they've moved on the way they, on the future when they create their own political party. But alas, what we see is they go on the attack. It's about HH this, HH. Mr. Mkleva mentioned that we haven't had any issue-based. For example, we talked about this. Nobody's talking about the debt. What is their program? How are they going to, if they are given, because remember, opposition is a government in waiting. So how are they going to deal with the issues that the current government is dealing with? They need to be detailed. And also our journalists, they need to be able to ask real questions. It's not just a question of somebody saying, I'm going to do this. You have to ask, how are you going to pay for it? Where is the money going to come from? You need to be very clear. But unfortunately, it seems, I don't know whether it's true or not, a lot of these programs on TV or on whatever media, they are paid for. So it's very difficult, I guess. But what I would want to think is, if we are going to create a mature debate forum, whenever you have, say, Mr. Sean Tembo on the program, try to bring other people that can have another view, maybe 3, so that people can interrogate. Because what is happening is just giving someone a floor and then this monologue of insults, of falsehoods, and they are there. If a journalist can counter that, they have to be really good journalists to counter that. Otherwise, they will be perceived as being bought by the ruling party. So it's just courtesy. Whenever you have somebody on a program, try to balance, bring 2 opposing views and they talk about it. There are people out there. If you're talking about things on fuel, bring experts in that field. Sit them there and ask them questions. Is this what Mr. Sedition was saying true? Those people that can give you the facts. That way, we are going to create a very good debate, good discourse, as well as we are going to start nipping in the bud these propaganda and falsehoods. It's just up to the journalists as well if they are up for it. But as we said earlier on, also the information, the way the government needs to be forthcoming. They shouldn't be guarding information. It's public information. That's why they are paid. That's why they are there. We are not asking for state secrets. We're just asking, can you just tell us, what is it that you planned to do? We know what the job of the Ministry of Home Affairs is to look at law and order. Yes, that's forgiven. It's been there in time immemorial. But what we want to see on the police side is, how many are we going to employ? How are we going to modernize our police? How far have we gone doing those kind of things? That's what we need to know. If we go to the Ministry of Community Service, we need to have, how are we dealing with the street kids? Today we are demonizing them as junkies. Do you know what? It's going to cause problems because citizens will take it upon themselves, fight those so-called junkies, which are street kids, unfortunate. And what will they do? They will arm themselves. It will be chaos. This is what the Ministry of Community should be doing. Do we know the statistics? What are the causes? What can we do about it? How far are we going with that? All that is not visible. It's all reactionary. I see. I think they might be doing stuff, but you just make it more visible. We are going to create then a very conducive environment in knowing, A, what the government planned, how they are going to get to do it, how we are going to measure that to see that we are going in the right position. If there are challenges, they tell us quickly. It's just that. It's so, at the end of the day, it's just this lack of communication. So those are the bits that we need. We need to liven up the debates by the journalists, bring opposing views, use experts. I don't know how you gonna define them. I mean, we've got a lot of universities in Zambia. We've got researchers around. We've got people who've worked in different portfolios around the world. They can help when you are discussing some of these issues. Just bringing somebody who just created some small party somewhere, they've never worked before in a corporate world. Maybe they've just been a student politician, a unionist at some college or university. Do you really think they understand the intricacies of statecraft? No, they don't. But our journalists will take that as the truth. There are people who've studied these things, who've seen these things. It's very easy to go to University of Zambia and find a political scientist who's studied this, who've published, who've looked at all these things in a more intricate thing, and bring them on the show to counter some of these things. It will be quite appealing to me to even watch some of these debates. At the moment, it's really difficult to even follow some of the news programs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. Thank you so much, Mr. Mukelevai, for coming. Our viewers, thank you so much. We don't have any questions from the viewers, and we expected some of our viewers to come. I posted the link, but nobody has come. Now we've come to an end of the program. I'm not going to give any closing remarks. All has been said. So the only thing I can do is thank you so much To all the viewers all over the world, thank you so much for your viewership. May the good Lord bless our beloved mother Zambia. We don't want any peace in Zambia. What we want is peace and tranquility, a good enabling environment. We want an opposition that checks the government, checks and balances, and also helps in creating that enabling environment that will bring investors to come and invest in Zambia, government to work for the people, and not propaganda or trying to incite anarchy. We don't want that in our country. Thank you so much for your viewership. May the Lord bless our beloved mother Zambia. Good night and bye for now.
Good night. Bye-bye.